And we're live. I almost lost track of time. I was just so busy looking at all the art I've received recently. Gonna give it a few seconds just so people can come on. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Geek Speaks Greek. I am the Geek. My name is George O'Connor. I am the writer and illustrator of the graphic novel series Olympians. I'm clearly not speaking Greek. What I'm actually doing is I'm talking about Greek mythology. I don't know if you've ever joined me before, but each episode of Geek Speaks Greek, I choose a different goddess, god, hero, or monster, sometimes multiples, and we kind of talk about them in depth. Just gonna blather on a little bit, just because people are still joining in. Hi, everybody. Man, I look rough today. It's getting to that part of being all of us trapped inside. It's like, look at my hair. I actually washed my hair today, which is the big mistake. Never wash your hair. I only wash it once a week. I normally try to do it on weekends. Messed it up this time. I'm going to kind of jump into it because we got an incredible amount of drawings from you all. So if you tuned in last week was Heroes Week. We started it off on Monday with Theseus. Kind of a bad hero. We all know this. I don't like Theseus. I kind of picked on Theseus, but there's a lot to pick on. It's not like I really worked hard at it. He stinks. Wednesday, we had Jason. Kind of like Jason. He has some bad scenes. But Friday, we finished up with female Shiro, Atalanta. And what's really nice about Atalanta, unlike the vast majority of characters from Greek mythology, she's not like just a total creep. And people really seem to like it, and they're like the floodgates were open. The amount of Atalanta artwork I received, and other artwork, it's crazy. I'm definitely not going to be able to show everything. So let me show some of the stuff I got. And, oh wait, we already saw that one. Guys, I'm sorry. This is just the way it is. It's a live cast. Sometimes I'm not going to be very on top of things. Okay, so this is from Ilya. She's actually sent in a bunch of stuff. First, here is her drawing of Atalanta, which is pretty amazing. You can see her patchwork furs. She's got her bow, and she's got a spear. Atalanta, of course, the swift huntress. That's really great. I love the color on that. Like, actually, I just want to look at, like, the hair. Look at the eye. That's just, like, that's such a good, solid drawing. Way to go, Ilya. She also drew a few more of her favorites. She drew Hermes, so good taste. I love Hermes, as we all know. That's a great job. I love the way you did his helmet, too. It's a really good interpretation of his wings. And then we have a Medusa before and after. There's Medusa before, there's Medusa after. Medusa and Atalanta, I feel like, are in a race for most popular non-gods. As far as characters who people just like, everybody seems to love them, which makes a lot of sense. They all have a lot of stuff really cool going on. Okay, so here we have, this is, okay, this is super cute. Are you guys ready? First, we're going to see a picture of Eleanor. This is Eleanor, who was so inspired by the Atalanta episode that she dressed up as Atalanta and ran around in her backyard. Hopefully nobody was throwing around golden apples to distract her. Here is the drawing Eleanor did. There's Atalanta running out ahead, and there's that... do I say the word creep too much? Probably. But Hippomenes is a creep. There he's throwing the golden apple to distract her, because that's the only way he could get her to like him. It's like, come on, dude, just... never use golden apple. Somebody should love you for who you are, and they should love you back for who you are. You shouldn't have to use enchanted fruit. That just seems like a weird way to get somebody to be, in love with you. Let's see what else we have here. This one, I really like this one. I was just checking this one right before we started. Oh no, that's the wrong thing. Okay. This one is from Nico. Look how confident these lines are. Like, I don't know if, Nico, I don't know if you understand what that means. Confident means when you're not, embarrassed to put them in line. Like, you just drew the heck out of this. Like, I love this. And that face, that's a great expression. That's an excellent drawing, Nico. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Let's see. Yehi from Korea has sent me a lot of amazing stuff. A lot of her stuff is a little bit wordy, but she has some ones that aren't as wordy, so I want to show some of those. She does full-on comics. I keep saying I have to post up a thing of her stuff, and I'm going to do it because she's incredible. All right, these are, this is from Nora. Here we have another Atalanta. It's a happy one. She's holding the golden apple. She's like, I got it. She's also holding bow and arrow. So maybe she shot Hippomenes. This is an alternate universe. She's like, I got the apple and I didn't have to get together with that guy. Whoa. This is, if you remember, when she was a young girl, two centaurs were like, we want to, then like this is her taking care of those two centaurs. That red stuff, actually, it's just raspberry jelly, so don't worry. It's definitely not blood. Oh, wait, I just noticed a cool detail. Wait, I have to go back to this one. Look up in the sky. Is that Helios watching because he sees all? Man, you guys are so awesome. Like, you guys just know your stuff. And then this is from Nora's little brother, Drake. That is... Why does it keep doing that today? I must be hitting stuff. This is Drake's version of Atalanta, which, again, these colors, this is amazing. Like, you guys, what a talented family. And then... Oh, wait, what is this one? Oh, of course. Drake also added Pan. Pan. There's a guy I got to get back to. I talked about this before. I almost even thought of doing it this week. I have to kind of circle back around and do Apollo and Asclepius again, and Hermes and Pan. Those are the first two episodes, and they were lost. I didn't tape them correctly. I'm not that smart sometimes. So what we'll hopefully do is... give them each their own episode, because at the time I was also combining multiple goddesses and gods in one. Like, I think there's enough stories about, say, Hermes that he gets his own episode. Gonna do a few more. This one I definitely want to get in because oh, wait. That drawing didn't show up. Guys, it's so rough. Okay, here it is. I've been saying her name wrong, and I want to apologize. Her name is Mishaya, not Mishaya. Mishaya drew a really awesome Atalanta. Like I'm saying, Atalanta really brought something out in people, and it's backwards, but I'll read it. Equal in measure, which that was what her name means, because she is the equal to, at least, if not the downright superior of any man. Here's one I wanted to show. So this is from Yehi. She drew a picture of what she thinks Hestia looks like when she's not wreathed in flame. Still based on my version, but look how cool. She took the same colors. Like, she still has, like, the blue-green eyes. Like, I did it kind of like the blue of a flame. And the hair. Like, that's some really cool stuff. Like, I'm like, wow, those are really amazing colors. Yehi, you're an incredible artist. Thank you so much. Let's do like maybe one more picture, because I still have like a dozen things to show here. It's crazy. Okay, this is a fun one. So Megan, who has sent in artwork, Megan, she's the one that ships together Hermes and Athena, and she's designed their children. Here they are. There's Hermia, Bellona, and Almathea, all dressed up, ready for battle. But the picture I really want to show this one, because like, she's smart. She knows how to play to the audience of me. You know how I always talk about how I have my special theory that Argus Panoptis and Hera were an item, and that's why she names it the Argo, and she has the peacock and all that jazz? Check it out. They're sharing a drink. It's such a nice little moment, too. And Hera's like, I'll raise a glass to you, Argus. He's like, I'm looking at you with all my eyes. He probably winks. Wink. Okay. I guess I should start because, like, there's still, like, I don't know what happened this weekend. You all went bananas, which I love. There's so much artwork. But just in case stuff slows down, I got to catch up because everything is really great. But if you do decide to do artwork, please send it to me at my email, georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. I'm going to definitely catch up on the stuff. There's just so many cool things. Like, I love that we've gotten to this part of the show now where people just kind of are just creating artwork, and people are writing stories, and like little details, like having like Helios watching. Like, that's such a great attention to detail. Like, that's the sort of thing I throw in my books and I don't think anybody pays attention to, but clearly you do. So thanks, guys. So today, I don't really have a theme for today. I'm going to let you in a little bit into my creative process. All weekend, I was like, I'll come up with an idea for this week. I'll come up with an idea. I never did. This morning, I wake up at like a little bit before 7 because I'm nervous. Because I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Like, why am I getting nervous about this? And I like laid in bed and I made up plans to actually talk about Dionysus. And I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about Dionysus because I'm doing his book. It's weird right now. And then I was like, wait, I'm going to do Hecate. So I don't know if this is going to be part of a theme, if I'm going to do something weird about, like, goddesses who need more respect, or kind of gods who operate on the edge of things. Get it? But I decided I want to talk about Hecate, because she's a really fascinating character. And she's also very popular, which is interesting. Well, I'm going to talk about this. There's so much to talk about her. So, all right, her name is Hecate, or Hecate, depending on how you pronounce it. I say Hecate. You would think maybe her name meant something to do with 100, like hecaton, like the hecatoncheires, which means 100 hands. But it doesn't. Apparently it means the worker from afar. She's a very old goddess. Like, if you go back to, like, the earliest accounts of Greek religion, she's already being mentioned. And she's one of those people who, one of those gods who kind of appears a lot at the beginning, and maybe appears kind of less in prominence as it goes on. And I'm going to talk about that a lot in here. Like, there's a lot of factors, I think, going into play in this. She's the goddess of, like, crossroads, boundaries. It sounds like somebody else we know. And then, interestingly, things like witchcraft and magic. And then, even more interestingly, like ghosts. And for me, personally, witchcraft and magic, I get it. Like, they kind of, like, most of what the gods do seems to be done on sheer power. Like, they don't seem to be making potions and things. But you do see characters who, that they work that way. Most famously is Cersei in the Odyssey. She's definitely a witch. Some people say she's the first witch. And then you see, like, in other stories, like, there kind of becomes a thread of witchcraft where, like, it's people doing magic, sorceresses, witches, things like that. That Hecate is one of the gods. Like, she's in charge of that. And then the idea of ghosts, super fascinating. That seems like a later idea to me, too. Because, the early Greek idea of, like, when you died, and then your shade is brought to the underworld by Hermes, and you wait there, and if you have a coin in your mouth, you give the coin to count on, and you cross the sticks and all that jazz. But, like, where do ghosts come in? I almost want to say, like, I have a theory. I'm working to something here. So, Hecate, she is, in some sources, a goddess. In some sources, she's a titan. She is the daughter of the titan Perseus, who is a second-generation titan. One of the titans actually retained his titanic stature, because we talked, like Prometheus, he's a second-generation titan, but he's not, like, titanic. He's just, like, he looks more like a god. Perseus is, he's the god of, I have to sneeze, sorry. He's the titan of destruction. We know that name. Perseus is the destroyer. Persephone is the bringer of destruction. Perse means destroy. So he was the god of destruction. And his wife was, oh man, I think it's Asteria, which means star. We have a name like Asterion, like the Minotaur. And she was like the titan. She's also like, actually she's not a titan. I think she's the daughter of Pontus. Anyway, she was like the goddess of like shooting stars. They have one kid. That's it. Which I'm like, wow, you don't ever see that. Normally it's like a billion kids or something. They have one kid, and that kid is Hecate. And I like to, like, I read a fact like that, it starts my mind racing. There's a lot of people out there who are only children, and they're delightful people. My girlfriend, for instance. I'm not. I'm one of 6. There's a lot of us. But, like, you have to wonder, like, given that they're gods, they very rarely cap it at one. Was there something about Hecate that, like, Perseus and Asterius were like, oh, that's enough. Let's just not have more kids. And then even more fascinating to me, for the most part, most mythographers agree Hecate doesn't have any kids. There's a few things, there's a few alternate myths here and there, but I kind of like the idea that she, like, you don't really see that in mythology too much, where someone actually ends a family line. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. It kind of makes sense because she has such strong associations with the underworld that she's not viewed as a child, as a god who has children. Like Hades and Persephone. Most people don't think they have kids because they're gods of the dead. And so is Hecate. This is what I'm getting at. Hecate is a super old goddess, right? So we first see mentions of her in Hesiod. I always talk about Hesiod. And she's mentioned quite significantly in Hesiod. He gives us the whole idea she's the daughter of Perseus and stuff. Oh, Perseus, because he's not first generation, you probably knows, he's the son of Krios and, I I should remember that offhand. Anyway, second duration. So, Hecate's around in Hesiod, mentioned quite a bit. In fact, according to Hesiod, she actually fights with the Olympians against the Titans in the Titanomachy. She also fights with the Olympians against the Gigantes and the Gigantomachy. So it's like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Because then you don't see her reflected elsewhere in myth, and she kind of doesn't really have this central role in Olympus. And this is where I'm going to get in my whole idea behind her. So there's a lot of overlap with her and other gods. So right off the bat, the boundaries, the crossroads, travel, things like that, that's Hermes' bag. Hermes was a super important and popular god. So she one of her big chunks of stuff is already dealing with things that he deals with. He also has the connection to the underworld, which she does too. But then additionally to the underworld, there's Persephone, there's Hades, there's all that. And it's probably telling that the standard myth that she has the most prominent role in is in the abduction of Persephone. And this is where she makes her biggest role in my series, Olympians. She actually guides Demeter. She meets Demeter at a crossroads, and she hands her one of her 2 torches. Her symbols are 2 torches, because she was a traveler. And she hands Demeter a torch, and she escorts her. Not to the underworld first, not right away. She actually escorts her to meet Helios, the sun, because the sun, as we mentioned in that drawing before, sees all. But I think, when you have a lot of gods, like the ancient Greeks did, they don't all necessarily come from the same spot. The ancient Greek world was a mixture of all different groups of people coming together, and they all had their different gods, and they would kind of come together. And I think that she probably, in fact, people say she came from the Thracian region of Greece, right? And that she probably had some redundancies with some of the other gods. I think, personally, she was probably originally a god like Hades. She was a god of the underworld who also had all these and she clearly has a lot of stuff in common with Hermes. And as the Olympian idea codified, and as certain gods grew in importance and popularity, other gods kind of got relegated to the sidelines. You see it happen like later in antiquity, where like Apollo, who is the god of light and brilliance and radiance and stuff, kind of takes over the position of god of the sun from Helios. And before that even, we see Artemis do the same thing with Selene, the moon. So I feel like this happened early on to poor Hecate. But the great thing about Hecate, she really hangs on. Like, she doesn't just go quietly into the good night. She's also the goddess of night. In fact, I wanted to mention this. There's some versions where she's actually, if you watched a few weeks ago, we talked about Nyx, the goddess of night. There's like one mythographer who actually says that she's the goddess of Nyx, which I'm like, that's pretty cool. I mean, just thought I would mention it. So Hecate, despite having like this great importance where she's there to like the OG Olympians as they fight against the Titans, and then kind of fades away, but she never does. She maintains in certain regions great popularity. In Athens, for instance, she was a very popular goddess. And she's actually, we already talked how she has this immense amount of overlap with Hermes. There's a lot of overlap with actually, if you think about it, with Hestia too, the hearth, and she has the torches. And she was viewed much the same way Hermes and Hestia were, as goddesses of the home. There were temples to her, certainly, quite a few actually. But I think she was one of those gods who people had a more personal relationship with. And I think that's why she's able to survive so well, despite the fact that in myth and in religion, to a large degree, she's kind of put off to the side. And it all makes sense, given her role, that she is put off to the side. Want to talk about, so one of the things about her is she was referred to as the three-faced goddess. And if you read like the Orphic versions, the Orphic myths, I mention them sometimes, they're always weird and they're written by like lunatics or something. Like, she literally has 3 faces. She has like a horse head, like a wolf head, and like a lion head. It's like, what? That's creepy. But the 3-head thing, you normally see her depicted in art, where she'll have like a normal human face coming forward, and then there'll be like a face here and a face here. Because she's the goddess of travel, of crossroads. She stands at the crossroads and she could see all things coming from all different directions. I don't draw her in Olympians with 3 heads, with the 3 faces. It's weird. There's nothing wrong with looking weird, of course. I mean, like, I have no problem with Argus Panoptis. But what I do, as a joke, a couple times, here she is. When we see her, I draw her in these 3 panels, kind of showing, like, a rapid mood succession for her. You can see here she looks a little worried. Here she looks very, slightly menacing, almost confident. And here she looks kind of relieved and happy. And I kind of played with the idea because people who like to ship relationships, you'll be happy to hear this one. There's a lot of evidence that given her close connection with Hermes and the overlap, that at least in some parts of the Greek world, they were viewed as being a couple. That they like were together. So I like wrote a little scene in here where like they kind of meet each other and he's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, she gives him this whole answer and it's crazy. He's like, "I like you. You're nutty." And I did that partially because like I figured she has these 3 faces. She has, if not 3 personalities, she can switch personalities really quickly. And for Hermes to like someone, I feel like they have to be a little bit left of center. They have to be a little bit weird. And so I'm like, okay, I kind of like this. So I guess I kind of ship them together too. Now, when I designed her, let me do some drawing of her. I think, given her association with magic, with darkness, with witchcraft, with ghosts. I mean, come on, I want to talk about the ghost thing still. I think like it's an easy assumption to make her look kind of spooky. And I remember actually thinking about this a lot, and I actually went through some of my old drawings, and she did maybe start off spooky, and I'm like, I don't think she's going to be spooky. I think it's almost a little bit too easy to make her just this creep. There's that word again. This creepy person. I'm like, I think there's more going on with her than that. So, give her just a kind of normal face. She's beautiful. I try to give her like very broad cheekbones. Prominent forehead. And then I really wanted her appearance to be kind of understated. I didn't want her to be like, it would be very easy to make her like, creepy with like black hair hanging over her face, like she just is like from The Ring or something. I'm like, I'm going to give her kind of like a beautiful appearance. So she has this braid here. She wears her hair loose in like little ringlets around her ears. Because there was nothing that I saw that really talked about her being scary, except for the Orphic stuff. But the Orphic things, I mean, they're just weird. Everything Orphic, it's like just craziness coming out. So I gave her this kind of stated, almost very calm and serene presence. Because the role that she plays in the myth, where she is this guide, she's this very trusted figure. And I wanted her to have some of that, but like at the same time, just to be that little twinge of madness around the corner. I figure all the gods are probably pretty crazy. I gave her a pretty normal dress as a nod to her association with night. It's a blue-black dress. And then she's normally drawn I normally draw her holding like her torches. Some of the other symbols of her, dogs. In fact, this is a kind of cool detail. You'll see in multiple sources that she was heralded by the like howling of dogs as she comes. Like dogs would start barking. That's kind of cool. She's also associated with like martens or weasels, like polecats. And there's 2 really funny myths. Well, one really funny myth and one not funny myth at all that kind of explain both those associations. So she is this goddess who has this strong connection to women who use magic, to witches, right? And there's this one, it's this little tiny story. There's not much to it. There was a witch named Gale, or Gale, but Gale. And Gale, depending on the source, the one I like, Gale was incontinent. It means she peed herself a lot. And she made a real big mess, and so Hecate turned her into a weasel. And that's where the weasel association comes with. I know that's not really funny. I feel bad for her that she couldn't control her bladder. But if you've read my book Hermes, you know I'm inordinately amused by like stories that explain like bodily functions and things like that. And as far as the dog, there's a few stories about this, but there's one that's really interesting. There's multiple accounts of the one I like is by Ovid, the Roman mythographer, who it's super interesting because it ties in with the Trojan War, specifically on the Trojan side of things, where Hecuba, who was the queen, the head queen of Troy, she was the queen of Priam. She's the mom of Hector, who was like the main hero on the Trojan side. after everything goes bad for them, and like she's taken into prison, and she's taken not into prison. They don't have jails. She's taken prisoner. She's literally been made a slave at this point, and she sees this guy, who has betrayed her family, and Hecate, who's an old woman, like attacks him, digs his eyes out. It's insane. Like, and attacks him, and people are like so horrified, and she just kind of undergoes almost this like werewolf like transformation where she's yelling at them and her voice becomes a bark, and she gets down on all fours and she becomes this hound. And in order to save her from the crowd, to give her like this second life, Hestia transforms Hecuba into a hound. Not Hestia, I'm sorry, Hecate. There's a lot of hex in there. Transforms Hecuba into a hound and kind of makes her like familiar. Do you all know what familiar is? You know how like they'll show like a witch who has like a black cat, and the black cat can, like Sabrina, and the black cat can talk to her? That's a familiar. And the idea of familiars goes back to her, right? Now, the whole ghost part, right? I want to talk about that because that's really interesting to me. And this is what kind of ties into my idea that Hecate has a role in the underworld. I feel like somewhere in Thrace, before there was really a big thing with like, before Hades and Persephone and everything reached their level, there was this queen of the underworld named Hecate. And you would die, and she would escort your soul to the underworld where she lived. And then as beliefs changed, as certain gods got more and more prominent, Hecate became this figure who lived on the borders, on the outside, past the boundaries, if you will, which is very appropriate given her roles. But she still maintains this thing. And then the ghost element, I think, let's just assume she's still in some way, I'm mixing my metaphors here a little bit. She's still escorting those spirits of the dead, but maybe she only has dominion over a very select group of them. And like, instead of taking them to the underworld, although interestingly, along with Hermes, she seems to be one of the only gods who can actually broach that underworld. Even Zeus himself can't. So she takes a certain element of these restless dead and does not take them to the underworld of Hades, but lets them kind of walk the earth with her, where they participate in magic ritual, where they participate in different rites and things like that, where they're kind of like this force of, I wouldn't say, they're not evil. There's definitely nothing in her to suggest that she is an evil goddess. You would think so, given like all the dark elements. But she's got an interesting agenda going on there. I know I'm being super vague here. And that's one of the things I find so cool about her, that she's survived in this really strange way at the outskirts of Greek religion, where she's bringing like these ghosts and witches and all this elements, things that are popular later, things that have their start with her, right? And then, interestingly, her worship kind of lasts longer than most of the other Olympians as a result, because she's already on the side, right? And so as Christianity becomes the official religion of like the Roman Empire, and they start shutting down pagan places, because she's always been on the side, she kind of survives in a weird way that a lot of the other gods don't. And worship of her lasts for a lot longer, many centuries more. And it kind of even morphs, like you'll find some really early Christian stuff that mentions her. And then I like to wrap this up with like talking about like, I mean, she makes a full-on appearance in Shakespeare. I mean, I don't know how many of you have read Macbeth, but there's the scene, there's the three witches, very famously. There's a scene in Macbeth where Hecate, as the queen of the witches, like the goddess of the witches, she comes and she's kind of yelling at them like, why haven't I been informed what's going on? When I learned Macbeth in high school, we were told that like a lot of people don't think that Shakespeare actually wrote that scene. And I was researching it, and apparently that's true. It's like a scene that was added in later. So that's also fascinating. So like, like people are like, she's got this like real, like Hecate just keeps appearing. Hecate is a goddess you can't keep down. And I'm, for one, really fascinated. And I have to admit, I was shocked to learn that when I went back and was posting images of art today. Like, I never drew a pinup for her in this book. In fact, I know I drew a pinup. It never got published. I never realized that. So I need to, like, go out there. I need to do some penance and do some stuff to get Hecate more out in the world. This is my first step. I'm doing this whole video for, I drew some pictures of her. I don't know, I gotta post some fan art of her or something, right? Because, like, she's just way too important for me not to be mentioning her, like, more. For all of us not to be mentioning her. It's like, there's the 12 Olympians, and then there's weirdly Hecate off by herself, but she's almost as prominent as them, and that's just a fascinating idea to me. I think I got everything. Oh, this is a kind of cool thing. Little detail. At the end of every month in the ancient world, especially in the parts where she was worshipped, Thrace, Athens, places like that, you would pay, there wasn't like a festival so much as you would pay an homage to her. You would leave sacrifices of food out for her at all the crossroads. And that was actually, it was something that was assumed that like homeless people and travelers coming through would eat it. And I'm like, that's also cool. Like, even the worship of her, it was looking at, like, even in the way she gets her worship, she was kind of looking out for other people. It makes all sense, thinking like she's this guide and stuff. I don't know. I don't know if I'm being very coherent here. I really like Hecate. I really had fun talking about Hecate today. Oh, and like, this is when I would like to throw it open to questions. And I already see something. Was she the psychopomp before Hermes took over? Yeah, psychopomp is somebody who escorts the dead to the land afterwards. And yeah, I feel like she was a psychopomp, right? I mean, she definitely is a psychopomp. She seems to do the same thing. And, you know, so Hermes, we believe his worship originated out of Arcadia. Hers, we're saying, worshipped out of Thrace. And Hermes just somehow, maybe because he's got the direct connection to Zeus, maybe, I don't know, he just kind of assumed that role, like, on a larger scale. Maybe because he has more appearances in epic poems. Who knows? It's kind of hard to figure out, like, what happened there. But yeah, she definitely has this role. And I wonder, idle speculation, we know, and I talk about this a lot, how sometimes we'll uncover certain rites that only women knew about. And for the most part, those were not the versions that were written down, but we could reconstruct these. I wonder if there was something where, like, there was, like, because of her strong connection to witches, who tend to be female, to sorceresses, if there was some sort of, like, female-only rite where she was the psychopomp for them. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out. It's really cool. I don't know. Somebody wrote, Dad is the boss, so he got the promotion. Yeah, Hermes engages some nepotism. I guess, you know, to go back to the beginning, the fact that she's like the last of a family line of Titans and just kind of ends it, yeah, that probably didn't make her job easier. Although, you know, I guess, you know, sometimes family can be frustrating. So maybe she shouldn't have to deal with any annoying family dinners. But, oh, I just got so sad for her. I was just picturing her sitting at like a big table with like 2 torches and like a dog. Because, you know, she's a dog and a weasel. And she's like, yeah, this is my life. But then again, like I said, I do like the idea of her and Hermes as a couple. Have I checked out Great Goddesses by Nikita Gull? Cool ideas. I have not. And I'm going to write that down really quick. Because I would love to read that. Great Goddesses. I know this is very interesting watching me. Right, okay. So, and somebody else asked, would I do a book about primordial gods, following up a little bit later, like about chaos, Erebus, Eros, and other personifications? I think I would like to do something like that. The problem with the primordial gods, there's super interesting concepts there, but they tend not to be personified. So their myths tend to be, if they have myths at all, and not just like listenings off in like theogony or something, their myths tend to be pretty dry and not really there. But a couple weeks ago when we were doing, we did like the kind of live design of Nyx and stuff, and we were talking about these things, like I was kind of like, there's so many cool ideas to play with it. And I would have to go further into speculation than I normally do. The whole premise of Olympians has been to deliver what, in my opinion, is a very accurate portrait of the goddess or god each book is about. I don't tell an exhaustive thing because there's too many stories to tell in one book for most of these characters. But I try to tell enough about them that you get a clear view of their personality, their role, and all that stuff. But like maybe after I finish Asgardians, my next series, and I do return to Greek mythology, maybe one of the things I'll do is something that is a little bit more out there, where I get to play with stuff like the Titans, play with the primordial gods, play with these ideas where there's these concepts, these tantalizing ideas, and I kind of flesh them out in my own direction. Make it a little bit more clear that this is me engage, like I'm playing a little bit looser with the actual factual mythological record than I do with Olympians. I don't know, because there is some, like, I've been doodling nonstop like Nyx in my sketchbooks, because like I'm like, there's some really cool concepts here. There's not a lot of stories where she encounters the Olympians or really plays a direct role, but like there's some really I love this whole idea that here's the Olympian gods, and they're like one strain of the gods, and then she's like this whole other familial line. They're kind of loosely related, but they have their own thing going on. Let's see. Oh, we got a lot of questions. Let me go. Would it be possible for female only right, since secret societies, cults, and rituals existed, like the Eleusinian mysteries? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I know that a lot of the stuff, the Eleusinian mysteries were like, we call them mystery. They were called a mystery cult, but they're also a mystery to us. We don't know a lot of it. We know it involves like concepts that we would nowadays call reincarnation. We know that Demeter and Persephone and Dionysus were involved and all these things, but a lot of the specifics we don't know because it was a secret cult, a secret initiation, and they just didn't put out information about that in the world. They weren't writing it down. It wasn't like Homer, or whoever Homer really was, wandered into town and sang you an epic poem for 3 days about it. Like, these were things you had to go through all these great rituals for, and only little elements of it survived to us. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're, like, clearly a character like her doesn't survive for literally thousands of years without there having been a body of knowledge that people were passing down about her that we just don't have access to. Now, I don't know if it was ever written down or if it was just verbal, just rites that people did. Who knows? But clearly there's information about her that is unfortunately lost until I invent a time machine. And, I mean, really, when I invent a time machine, first thing I'm doing is going back to see a Triceratops. As much as I love Greek myth, I mean, then I don't see what else about Hecate. Eleanor also thinks that your first drawing looks like your drawing of Terpsichore in the Apollo book. Let me go back and look. I don't have an Apollo. Yeah, I could see that. You know, Eleanor, sometimes when I draw a face, I kind of like, if I were to draw this again, I would make her nose a little bit less straight and a little bit broader in the face. Do I have an Apollo here? Sometimes I end up kind of recycling the faces. People have noticed this, that Metis looks a lot like Medusa before she transformed, for instance. You know, sometimes you kind of draw a character. Heck, if you want to see people who look a lot alike, take a look at like a black and white drawing of like either Apollo or Hades. They basically look the same, just like colored in one guy's hair yellow and one guy's hair black. Let's see. What are books you recommend for young readers that finished your series and really liked it? Okay, I'm going to assume... So as far as comics, I'm just going to throw these two out really quickly. I would read Gareth Hines' versions of both the Odyssey and the Iliad. I've always felt like his and my work works very well in conjunction, but that gets way more in-depth. And so depending how young they are, it might actually be a little bit more intense. Like, because it's like he doesn't cut anything out. I'm not just saying like just in terms of violence and stuff. I'm just saying there's just a lot of stuff that happens in that. So it's a pretty long thing. I'm always going to come back and say, like, you should read Dolaire's. Dolaire's Book of Greek Myths is so good. Now, sometimes people look at it and they don't get the drawings as much. So what I recommend, because this is what I did, you read Dolaire's because the text is amazing, and you have a sketchbook next to you, and you draw as you read it. And that's what I would always do. Because, like, some of those pictures, I mean, I love the Dolaire's book. But, like, I mean, some of the pictures are pretty funny. Actually, if you look at Dolaire's, take a look at their Hermes. You can see where I got my Hermes from. What's another one that's pretty great? I can't see it from here. There was this older book I had called Heroes, Men, and Monsters. I'm going to step off camera for a second and show it. It's not called that at all. It's called Gods, Men, and Monsters. It's an older book. I'm not sure if it's around anymore, but it's another one that, together with Dolaire's, I read a lot as a kid. I definitely prefer Dolaire's to this now, especially as I've gotten older. You know what? Just read Dolaire's. Read Dolaire's. It's great. It's amazing. Somebody is qualifying. Yes, Asgardians is next. That's going to be my next book series after this. 4-book series, retelling pretty much all the Norse myths we have because there's just not as much as there's Greek. What a great question. Eleanor asks, since Hecate travels so much, does she have a chariot? If so, what kind? Or does she just walk? I don't think she does have a chariot. Although I can picture in my head, I feel like I can picture a vase painting maybe where she is in a chariot. This is me working off the top of my head, not really sure. I imagine, given her retinue and her role, that if she has a chariot, I'm going to draw the chariot. It would be, it'd have the wheels, it'd have a spot for a torch, and another spot for a torch. And she would be riding on the back, the wind flying in her hair, her robe flying out behind her. And I feel like it would be pulled by a team. Well, that's the worst drawing of a dog I've ever seen. Of a team of hounds. Kind of like a dog sled race. I feel like it is interesting. As a goddess who travels a lot, I feel like she would do the kind of thing where she just kind of is traveling places and then appears, like from a quick edit. She probably teleports a lot, right? Let's see. What else do we have? Do you think Delair's Greek myths is an accurate interpretation of the myth? It's very popular, but also very different from my books. Yes, I do think it's accurate, but this is the important thing to remember. There are a lot of differences that Delair's has from mine. With Greek mythology, there is never a Bible. There was never one codified source that they decided, these are the stories and these rest don't work. There's almost every myth, you could find at least one alternate version. For the really popular myths, like the abduction of Persephone, you could probably find dozens where different people have told it in different ways. So sometimes Delair's will do a version. I'm like, I don't like that. And I'll tell a different version. One of the things I was much more concerned about than I think Delair's was making everything make sense in a chronological period of time. It's not really important. They're myths. You could kind of fudge stuff. But I wanted everything. I worked at a timeline where these myths had to have occurred, and I try to stick to that very closely. So we're both using actual sources. I could read Delair's a lot of times and recognize which source they use as their myth. They don't actually write them down, but just like me, they use a lot of Hesiod, for instance. I don't think they have Hecate at all, though, in their books, which is interesting. I'm going to have to go back and check that afterwards. But yeah, they're both very accurate, just depictions of myth. Just that myth itself in Greek myth is so wide because there's so many different versions. You could just tell a million different things. Delair's introduced me to Norse mythology. Didn't know about the Greek until recently. That's interesting, because the Norse mythology in this country, at least, the United States, was out of print for years, but the Greek mythology never went away. I don't know this one, an illustrated version of the Iliad by Gillian Cross. I'm going to have to check that out. Is Hecate very smart? Would she be a Hermes rival as far as brains? Oh, that's a good question. Okay. I'm quickly scanning the stories that have survived us about her. She doesn't seem to be as much of a trickster as him. She seems to be a lot more sober and serious about her job. But in my take on her, I do picture her as a very intelligent goddess. Have you ever met a person, I'm sure you have, who's very, very smart? And they're so smart, they're just a little bit kind of weird, and sometimes they miss obvious things in front of them. I feel like she's probably like that. The same way Hermes is really smart, but his great downfall is that he's always being goofy and playing tricks. I feel like her great thing is that she kind of has a narrow field of vision in front of her. She would see which is ironic given that she could see in 3 directions at once. Maybe, because she is so concerned about everything happening around her at once, I feel like the small details for her, she would maybe not pay as much attention to. This is all just my gut level take on the character and the way I like to envision her. And kind of a lot of the personality I'm forming for her comes from the idea that she is someone who exists on the outer fringes of the Olympian order. So she clearly gets along with them enough that they have some relation with her. But she's probably not being invited to every single party. And she probably wouldn't go even if she was. Maybe as goddess of crossroads, she doesn't need it. She knows the shortcuts. All right. That's the new official thing. Yeah, she does not need a chariot because she knows all the shortcuts. I like that. It's a really good point. Somebody wrote she is a goddess, which I guess is probably a reference to whether or not she is a goddess or a titan, maybe. And I know that's one of the things, I feel like we in the modern age like to qualify these things a lot more than the Greeks did. I think specifically, and I'm speaking we, like me and you guys as fans of this stuff, I feel like this is something that we like to quantify this information. We like to categorize to say who's, like I was just admitting, I like to put these things in chronological order. I don't think the ancient Greeks cared about that. They were like, it was the mythical past we don't understand. I'm like, no, it has to make sense that this myth happened for that one, because otherwise how would Hephaestus be there? So, yeah, I would consider her a goddess. And I think that just comes, I mean, I feel like she's child of second generation Titans. I feel like Titanhood only lasts for 2 generations. I can't think of any third generation Titans. So I'd say she's a goddess. Let's see. In his version, I guess we're talking about Dolares, Theseus doesn't leave Ariadne behind on his own accord in Dolares, which seems unusual. It is unusual, but we talked about, so just to catch people up who weren't here for it, one of the many reasons I maintain that Theseus is a big creep is because after he gets Ariadne to refute her family and her home and give up everything she's ever known or ever has any part of to help him kill her half-brother, Asterion the Minotaur, he straight up ignores her and leaves her on the island of Naxos and goes sailing on to Athens without her. And I don't think so. I guess I need to reread Dolares tonight because I don't remember their take on this either. But I guess in Dolares, it's not a choice by Theseus, and they're not the originators of that. There have been other people who retell the stories who make it that he has been. There's a version where he's under a spell by either Dionysus or Aphrodite or someone to leave her there on purpose so that she can meet Dionysus, which is very nice and convenient to alleviate him of being a terrible person. And if that was the only terrible thing Theseus did, I'd be like, that has some merit. But then Theseus straight up forgets to put up the sails on the way home and has his father jump into the ocean. And then he does a million terrible things. All he does is terrible things. So I don't think we get to wash his hands of this one terrible thing because everything he's done is terrible. You were amazing at telling myths. Thank you. I feel like I'm really all over the place today. Sorry if this was already mentioned. Does Hecate live on Earth, Olympus, or the underworld? That's a great question. And she seems to, I would say she lives in this is going to be hard to explain. She doesn't live in Olympus, though she does have access. And she doesn't live in the underworld, though she does have access. And she does, I feel like she lives in her own place, like her own sideways liminal place, because that's her whole concept. I feel like the real core of her is she is the super major character who just doesn't quite fit in anywhere. And not in a way where she's like, everybody doesn't like me. Her whole role as a goddess of boundaries is she exists outside of boundaries. So I feel like she probably has a home that there's a weird way that she kind of steps sideways through time and space and is there. And it's kind of everywhere. And getting to the idea she knows all those shortcuts, this is me making up with a spot. She probably is able to pop out of this place into different spots. She has wisdom other gods don't. When Demeter, after her daughter has been abducted by Hades, is traveling the entire planet looking for her daughter, why is it Hecate is the one who has the knowledge that Helios would have seen? It could be common sense, which would actually go back to the idea that she has the brains for Hermes. But maybe she has information that's just different. Maybe the fact that she exists independent of these large groups, that she's kind of like this free agent that's associated on the side. Maybe she was able to tell Demeter what other gods already knew, but she didn't have to fear because she wasn't part of that group. She didn't have to toe the party line, so to speak. She could just be like, yeah, go ask Helios. He sees everything. He's up in the sky. Look, we'd see him right now if it weren't so cloudy. And by the way, it is cloudy in New York today. I meant, somebody was like the goddess thing. She is a goddess. She could do anything. Yeah, she's one of those super duper powerful people. Some of the Titans' kids are also Titans, like Helios and Selene, second generation. Yes, so was Perseus, who her dad is second generation. What's his name? Atlas. He's second generation. That dude's like the Titanest Titan and ever Titan. Wait. Somebody mentioned, the idea of that she is the all three goddess. Maybe she is in all three places, Earth, Underworld, and Olympus. I like that. A part of her lives in each of the three worlds, but also doesn't belong to all of it. That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that idea. Somebody asks, who would win in a fight, Nemesis or Hecate? Okay, let's compare feats. Nemesis, for those... Do I still have Nemesis' picture? Nemesis was the goddess. She is the daughter of Nyx. She is the goddess of retribution, of revenge, right? Wow, we have to go back pretty far. I draw a lot of pictures with you guys. There's Nyx. Spooky. She was the goddess of the night. And here is Nemesis, her daughter. Nemesis wielded a scourge, sometimes a sword. I didn't draw the sword because I thought that was boring. A whip with barbs on is way cooler. She had these black wings. They didn't mention what the wings were, so I drew her with bat wings. But I'll tell you guys, I've been drawing a lot of pictures of Nemesis. I switched them back to bird wings. I felt like bat wings was maybe a little bit too on the nose. So she has these black wings. I made her eyes these inky pools. And her thing is... She would be somebody you'd pray to. If you saw someone getting away with something that they shouldn't have, who needed to be stopped, you would pray to her. But she also she existed as like an example to put fear into you, to keep you from doing terrible things that you could get away with otherwise. Now Hecate, it's tempting to say she's much more sedate in terms of her power, right? And I kind of glossed over these. But they describe her in the Titanomachy fighting against Titans. She doesn't dispatch in the Titans, but there's this one Gigante that she straight up kills. I think it's Enceladus, who, like, she is described as just killing, like physically overpowering this Gigante and not murdering him. They're in a battle and killing him. So she's got some pretty good, like, I feel confident saying Hecate is on Olympian power level. I don't know where Nemesis falls in there. I think I had decided through talking that Nemesis is probably somewhere just a little bit shy of an Olympian in power. So I'm actually going to give the nod in this one to Hecate. I don't know why they would fight, and I think it would be one of those, like, in general, you don't see the immortals fight each other because it's kind of like they could do it for centuries and nobody would ever win, so I feel like she would maybe be the one that takes it. So, looks like I just realized I've been talking so much. We're almost done, and this thing cuts off an hour, so I'm going to have to wrap this up. So, one last question. What is my next book? Or when is my next book? My next book is Dionysus. I'm working on it now. So it's taking a little bit longer because I did another book in between. So that's why normally there would be an Olympians book every year. This one took just a little bit longer. So Dionysus is the next book. It is the final Olympians book. I should have an actual date pretty soon for you. We're trying to see how quickly I can get done with this. And then at 12, Olympians will be closed. We'll print up some big omnibuses and box sets and stuff. Then I'm going to do the 4-book series as Guardians. And after that, and I've said this for many times, I think I'd like to come back and tell more Greek myths. Tell about stories about the goddesses and gods who haven't gotten as much play in the stories, and everybody in there pretty much. Tell stories about heroes that haven't gotten as much play. About monsters. It would be a series about Greek myths. It wouldn't be called Olympians because the name Olympians, by virtue of it being Olympians, has to be about the Olympians, the big guys. And they'll certainly be appearing. You're not going to be able to tell a story about any of these guys without, almost every myth is going to have a Zeus in it, a Hermes in it. They'll be appearing, but I don't want them to be the focal point anymore. I want them to be there, and they do their part. And then we could explore all the other gods, from primordial gods all the way through to, the last heroes. So I think that wraps it up for today. If you have any questions that I didn't get to and you really want to hear, please write to me at Gmail at George O'Connor Books. George O'Connor Books at Gmail. I said that wrong. Or you could also just what you could also do is why Watch me on Wednesday, where I will be giving a lecture that I haven't decided yet. So again, I guess if you have any theories about what you want to see, write me, because sometimes somebody writes me something. It's a good suggestion. If you've missed any episodes or you want to watch them again, go to my YouTube, youtube.com/user/George Olympians. All the episodes are up there, except for those first 2 missing episodes. Poor Apollo, poor Hermes. So I'm going to re-record those ones. Probably not this week, but who knows how I feel. I'll let you all know. Just keep checking on my Instagram. I'll post what it's going to be. Please keep sending artwork. Please keep being awesome. And I'll see you all on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.